Welcome to Ecclesia Principles, a biblical strategy for believers to engage in God's design for government with Ray Eppard.
Hello, glad you could join us again today. Today we're going to conclude on our looking at the jurisdiction of church government. Now with this, we've done a lot of comparing that with the First Amendment, because First Amendment is very much a great stating of faith. From that standpoint, it is very biblical in its approach. Now, with this, I want to deal with some things that is dealt with culturally. Now, especially for the past number of years, there's been this growing debate, and one of the things that I will say is anytime you see the changing of terms, that a different word or a different phrase is used to address a subject, there's always a reason for that. There's always a reason for that. And in this, you see, the First Amendment talks about not establishing religion nor prohibiting the free exercise of religion. Now, with this, and again, let me just go ahead and read our text. Let every soul be subject to the governing authorities or jurisdictions, for there is no authority or jurisdiction except from God, and the authorities or jurisdictions that exist are appointed by God. You see, at this point, there's been a change of wording with so much of it. It's not so much freedom of religion. You'll hear the term freedom of worship. And it's important to note that difference, because in that, I'll use the analogy of the frog in the pot. You know, if you put frog in boiling hot water, he's going to jump out. But if you put him in cool water and then turn the heat up and it gradually warms, he'll sit there till he dies. The thing of it is in our culture, those that are trying to change our culture, they use that approach. They, most of the time, don't endeavor to do things too quickly, but they endeavor to turn the heat up gradually so that there will be less resistance to what they're wanting to do. And with this, the concept of freedom of worship as opposed to freedom of religion really comes down to this. If you're discussing freedom of religion, freedom of worship, then here's what they will say. Well, you have the freedom to go to your church on whatever day you want to worship. You can have your place of worship. You can worship your God in your home. You have freedom of worship. But see, what that does is it makes everything outside of the place of worship and your home secular. That you cannot take your faith into the public arena. And that is a concept that has been sold so much to the church that there are so many ministers today that will not address, quote, secular issues because they have bought into the concept of freedom of worship and not freedom of religion. Freedom of religion means I can take my faith wherever I go. If I go to the marketplace, I can take my faith there. If I go into the public arena and into the discussion of policy and so forth, freedom of religion means I can take my faith there. But freedom of worship means I got to keep it at the house of worship or at my home. And you see, that is how, if you would, the church is being neutralized. Jesus made a statement one time that he said, if you're going to spoil the strong man's house, then you have to first bind him. And you see, that has an analogy for what Jesus did in delivering us. But on the flip side, Satan has turned that. Satan knew that the Church of Jesus Christ is the strong man of America, and that it is the church that really makes America great. And the principles of God's Word makes America great. So what he has endeavored to do is to bind the strong man, to limit and tie the church to their home and to their place of worship through freedom of worship. Our founders did not give us freedom of worship. They gave us freedom of religion, which means I can practice my faith wherever I go. God bless you. Join us again next week.
You've been listening to Ecclesia Principles with Ray Eppard. Follow us on YouTube and Facebook on our Ray Eppard pages. This program was brought to you by Victory Worship Center and World Outreach. Services Sunday 9 o'clock and 11 o'clock, 200 Hammond Lane, Stanton, Virginia.